Have you ever really thought about what it means to be a pastor, or a priest, or any kind of spiritual guide? It's this ancient role, right? Goes back thousands of years, but it's still so important to millions of people. So today, we're going to dive deep into pastoral theology. We'll unpack where it came from, how it was totally revolutionized, and what it even means in our world right now. Okay, let's get into it.
So, the first thing we got to get our heads around is the word itself, pastor. It comes straight from the Latin word for shepherd. And this isn't just some cute title, okay? It's the central metaphor for everything we're about to talk about. The whole idea is built on a shepherd caring for a flock. If you can picture that, guidance, protection, care, you've got the key to the whole topic.
All right, so where does this whole idea of a spiritual leader even start? For that, we've got to rewind way back to the Old Testament. And interestingly, the first model wasn't really a shepherd at all. It was a priest, and this role was defined by a very, very strict set of rules.
Now, what's so fascinating here is that this wasn't a job you applied for. It wasn't a calling you felt in your heart, not in the way we think of it. No, the priesthood was an inheritance. It was a duty you were handed at birth, all based on who your dad was.
And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. You can see how the priesthood was literally passed down through the family tree. You had to be from the tribe of Levi, and not just that, you had to be a direct descendant of Aaron, Moses' brother. Your bloodline was your destiny. That was it, a divine, unchangeable order.
And the requirements, wow, they were incredibly strict. I mean, besides having the right family tree, a priest had to be physically whole, totally unblemished. There was even a specific age window for service. You had to be between 30 and 50. Even who you married was regulated, all to maintain this state of ritual purity. This was no casual gig. It was a highly formalized, heavily regulated office.
So, what did these priests actually do? Well, you can think of them as the ultimate mediators. They were the ones who taught God's law. They acted as judges when people had disputes. They blessed the people, and most importantly, they offered the sacrifices that were required to atone for sins. They were the bridge, standing in that gap between the divine and the human.
And then, everything changed. A completely new voice comes onto the scene, and it introduces this radical new idea. It's not about a priest who offers the blood of animals anymore. It's about a shepherd who offers his own life. And that one concept, it would completely redefine what spiritual leadership was all about.
And this brings us right into the New Testament. This is where that old model of a rule-based, hereditary priest gets totally flipped on its head by this new ideal, the shepherd who sacrifices himself.
So let's put these two side by side, because the contrast is just night and day. The role shifts from something you're born into to a divine calling, something you're chosen for. The focus moves away from all these external rules and rituals to an internal motivation of love and service. And the job of mediator, it goes from offering sacrifices for the people to being the sacrifice. It's a total paradigm shift.
So in this new model, Christ is held up as the ultimate example, right? The great shepherd. That means modern pastors are seen as under-shepherds. Their job isn't to make up their own rules or build their own kingdom. Their job is to follow the example of that sacrificial leadership, to care for his flock. That's where their authority comes from.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. How is this ancient idea of the shepherd actually understood right now? We're going to look specifically at the ideal within the Orthodox Christian tradition, which puts a huge emphasis on the inner life of the pastor.
See, in the Orthodox way of thinking, just having the title of priest or pastor isn't nearly enough. Real spiritual authority doesn't come from the fancy clothes you wear or the office you hold. It flows directly from your own inner spiritual state. The idea is, a pastor has to lead themselves before they can have any hope of leading anybody else.
But what happens when that inner life breaks down? Well, the tradition is crystal clear about the dangers of a shepherd who goes bad. So before we even look at the ideal, it's pretty powerful to understand the pitfalls first.
The sources lay out some really clear warning signs of a failed shepherd. Things like a love of money, materialism, a thirst for personal glory and honor, looking down on the poor, and at the root of it all, just a fundamental lack of care for the actual human souls they're supposed to be guiding. This is exactly what the 4th century saint John Chrysostom was talking about with his pretty terrifying warning. I think many priests have no part in salvation.
Okay, so that's what not to do. In direct contrast, what does the ideal shepherd look like? What are the qualities of a true spiritual guide? The true shepherd is basically the mirror opposite. It all starts with humility and just being real, being authentic. Their actions aren't about what they can get out of it. They're driven by a genuine love for their people. They're spiritually watchful, always on guard, and, this is crucial, they stay faithful to the tradition that's been handed down to them.
So what's the whole point of all this? Where is the shepherd actually trying to lead the flock? Well, it all comes down to this one incredible concept called theosis. This is the ultimate goal of Orthodox pastoral care, to guide every single person on a journey toward union with God. It's a process of transformation, sometimes even called divinization. The shepherd's job is to point the way to that ultimate destination.
But of course, trying to be a shepherd in the 21st century, well, it comes with a whole new set of challenges. This timeless role is up against some very modern pressures.
So, how does this ancient vocation actually function in the world we live in right now? The source material we looked at points to a couple of key challenges that today's spiritual leaders are constantly bumping up against.
And two of the biggest hurdles are just modernity and secularism. Think about it. How does a role that's rooted in ancient tradition, in faith, in the supernatural, how does that fit into a world that is obsessed with the new, the material, and the secular? It creates this constant push and pull for the modern shepherd who's just trying to guide their flock.
Which really leaves us with one last question to chew on. In a world that is defined by nonstop change, endless information, and values that seem to shift every other day, what is the real value of a shepherd? Of a steady hand, a guide, pointing towards something that's supposed to be timeless? That's definitely something worth thinking about.